first timers here tonight, and I have a word for you in just a second. But first, if you don't mind, I'd like to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Very good, thank you. Now, strange enough, I have my November notes there, not my December. You see my December notes, Charlie? Oh, God. I'm mixed up again, everybody, as usual. Okay, who's got my notebook? What did I do with it? All right, I'll wing it. Never mind, here it is. Every month is something, isn't it? Okay, we got through the important part. If you, like I, have a cell phone in your pocket that needs to be turned off, please don't hesitate to do that right now. Okay, first timers, would you raise your hands, please? Wow. Thank you so much for coming. If you like it and would like to come back again, there are sign-up sheets out in the hallway. They're blue, and they look about that long, that high. You put your name on them, and you will get either a postcard or an email, whichever you wish. So please do that. You'll notice that we have several people wearing these things who aren't on staff. There are World War II veterans in the house. Would you raise your hands, please, so everybody can see you? Obviously, we're in good company. Where are we? Okay, we have some miscellaneous notes like we do every month, and this is our 12th month this year. We haven't missed a month. We've had a veteran, World War II vet every month, and we're very happy about that. So we'll keep doing that. Thanks to your contributions, by the way, we are a 501c3 for your first timers. We do gladly accept your free will offering to the Helmet Committee, whom you'll see by the doors on your way out. If anybody grabs you by the neck, that's probably they asking for a buck or two. But anyway, we appreciate that. And what do we do with it, besides covering our own costs, which aren't much, but we do have some costs? What we do is we make contributions to such organizations as the Central Pennsylvania Food Bank, Pennsylvania Wounded Warriors, the Liberty USO, Grace United Methodist Church, where we are right now, and the Holocaust Museum and Remembrance Center down in Philadelphia, who has provided some speakers for us. And so we're very happy to be able to do that with your contributions and with our book sales outside. If you haven't seen that, some great books for nice prices, so please take advantage of that. Very important announcement is that next month there will be no dinner in the basement. So don't come expecting to have dinner, because it's not going to be there. Probably the following month we will have it. It's a free will offering dinner as well, but you have to call in advance to the number on the postcard or the email, which goes to Bev over here, and she tells the kitchen what we need to do. We have other roundtables in town. We have the Vietnam roundtable and the Civil War roundtables. So, Rich Burton, would you like to talk a little bit about one or two of those?
Okay, there's a Vietnam roundtable that's going to meet next Thursday at 8000 Dairy Street, which is at the end of Dairy Street, almost out by Nye Road, there by the Rudders or Members First. I have a table set up in the back with next Thursday's speaker, and then we're off in January and February, going to resume in March. But next Thursday we're going to have a Marine tunnel rat, and he was also a point man and also a demolitions expert. For those of you that don't know what a tunnel rat did, there are the men that went down in these little tiny 4-foot square holes and with a flashlight and a weapon, trying to dig out the enemy. There were spiders and snakes and booby traps, and not a job for the faint of heart. But he's coming in from Reading, so it's next Thursday, 7:30. That's going to be the end of our 5th year. I'm going to have a cake and I'll have my usual brownies. So, you know, which is more than what you get here. So, coffee, juice, and broccoli. Well, this is a sacristy. You know, our building is a little bit. You know, this is 5-star. We are 1-star. So Steve's going to talk about the Civil War roundtables.
That's a hard act to follow. Just a quick announcement about the Hershey Civil War Roundtable. No meeting in December. Our next meeting will be in January, Thursday the 18th, if you want to mark your calendars. Our speaker is going to be Cooper Wingert, who is like the Mozart of military history, child prodigy. He's now a sophomore at Dickinson. He's just written, I think it's his 5th book on the Underground Railroad in South Central Pennsylvania and the abolitionists. And that's going to be the topic of his presentation in January. For the Harrisburg Civil War Roundtable, we do have a meeting in the month of December. It's Friday the 15th over at the Radisson Hotel. If you're coming just for the speaker, be there at 7:45. I have to tell you, the Community Courier just came out this week and advertised that Ed Bonekemper was going to talk about the myth of a lost cause. We were all looking forward to that. Unfortunately, Ed's in the hospital. He's not going to be able to make it. But Dr. Richard Summers, a longtime member of the Harrisburg Civil War Roundtable, very eminent military historian, is going to talk on General Robert E. Lee and the Civil War in the East. So if you'd like to join us, we'd love to have you. I'll have flyers in the back for our spring field trip, but that's all for now. Thanks.
Thank you. Couple of quick other ones. Indian Town Gap every year holds the Battle of the Bulge reenactment. This year it's from January 30th to February 3rd, in case any of you would like to bundle up and participate. There is a dinner dance on Friday night, which, by the way, is free to all World War II vets. And I know you all got happy feet, so if you want to go to that, but you have to register by tomorrow night. So please do, and if you want to register, you'll see Mr. Moy. Where are you? Where's your hand? Right over here. He'd be more than happy to take your information and get you signed up. And finally, Chris Kiefer, where are you? Chris, here, has a couple of words. He's got something nice to offer.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Kiefer. I am a photographer, and my passion somehow is World War II and fighter planes. So I combine my interest in that and the nose art from that period. I create an annual calendar featuring all flight-worthy World War II aircraft and traditional pinups. We have an expensive calendar on the market, but tonight I brought one, hopefully for everybody. There's a little bit more here than I thought, so we're going to give the veterans the opportunity to get one first, if you guys don't mind. So those will be right out at the book stand. It's a beautiful calendar. We support the U.S. military. We send them to active duty, and this is my way of contributing. Go to my website and join us. Thank you so much, and be sure to pick up your free copy.
Thank you. Thanks for what you do. Other things that we do, Charlie and I have been busy this month. We've gone to a couple of high schools and been part of their take a warrior to work type of day, or whatever the heck they call it. And by the way, at the Lower Dublin High School, one of the veterans, maybe he's here tonight, left this. And I thought it was, one of these things to get me off stage, but was that? Yeah, I'll give it to you. Anyway, if anybody recognizes it or knows who it might be, here it is. And for the last time this year, I'm going to say, what World War II veteran Marine left his hat here? He's had it for 3 or 4 months now, begging for somebody to claim it. And if anybody knows about a Marine. I can tell it's a Marine because it's threaded on the inside. You know, they're jar heads, so they have their threads. I just learned that tonight. I think it's kind of cute. Anyway, we represented the round table at Cabela's in Hamburg last month when they dedicated their POW MIA chair. That was a very nice event that they had, all sorts of dignitaries from Berks County and whatever, and at which our friends, more hats, at which our friends Bill Philly, our recent speaker, and David Mills were honorees, both of them having been POWs. And today we were at the Capitol Rotunda for the ceremony honoring Pearl Harbor veterans. Our guests were there, and it was a very nice thing, but it's just a privilege because when we wear our shirts, places like that, people are starting to recognize us, and I see we get more newcomers every month, and I hope that has something to do with it. So welcome everybody. It's showtime. Charlie, would you please tell us what's coming up and introduce our guests? And whose hat is this? Where'd you get that?
More hats. They give them hats.
Okay, hats for sale. Anyway, Charlie, it's your show.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome, and I'm glad to see you have a rather robust crowd. Makes us happy because we're fulfilling our purpose, and that is to recognize our World War II veterans. Can I see those hands for the veterans again, the World War II veterans? That's amazing. Thank you for your service. We very much appreciate that. I'm looking for one of the World War II veterans, and I don't see him. Oh no, I know Richard. He's got a bit of a British accent, I think. I'm looking for Tom. Tom Willem. Where's Tom? There we go. All the way from Hagerstown, Maryland, Tom Willem. And he's also a Pearl Harbor survivor. I met Tom and his lovely wife Helen last year. We went down to, no, it was earlier this year, I believe. We took, where's Chuck Klein, our other, is Chuck here tonight? There's Chuck. Yeah, you're a little guy. He spoke for the Hagerstown Club, and we met Art's daymates, and Art invited us to go to his club for dinner, and we had a wonderful dinner with Art. Unfortunately, he left us about 3 or 4 weeks later, but Art was a very charismatic person, and we miss him. I'm going to go into the next month. Next month, I have a fellow. I interviewed him on Monday in Williamsport. His name is Charlie Libby. He's in the 628th tank destroyer, and he was also a command car driver. He's 4th day in Normandy, and all through the Battle of Bulge and everything else. The outstanding thing about this guy is he's 100 years old. He looks like he's 70, and he's a real pip. I'm telling you, he's fun to be around. And his hobby is sort of unique. At age 100, he loves to fast dance with young girls. So if any of you veterans want to challenge him, we'll put you on that. He's coming down from Williamsport next month, and he'll share that story with us. And tonight we have, believe it or not, counting Tom, Major Hank Heim is here. You want to stand? You're one guest of honor as well. The Major was here a couple months ago with Bill Philly. He's the pilot on the B-17 that rescued the Romanian prisoners. And we're glad to see you again, Hank. Glad to have you here. So that's And you're a Pearl Harbor survivor too, I can't forget that. So now we got Tom's a Pearl Harbor survivor, we got Hank, and believe it or not, we've got 2 more Pearl Harbor survivors tonight. We have a feast here. We have Dick Schimmel from Allentown. I've known Dick for a number of years. He's always at the wedding air show, and he has a very interesting story for us. And then we also have a fellow that came from Oklahoma and moved here, Lieutenant Colonel William Bonelli. So, Richard and William, what do you say we go up on stage and scare these people? Okay? No swearing.
Charlie, give Kurt the other microphone. No, the one in your hand. The one on the stand was to be in front of you.
No, I don't have to hold it.
That's why they put a stand there. I can speak back here.
Well, this is different. I never had a stand in front of me before. It means I have to lean forward to talk. We had some things written out. We were going to go, and we talked today. Okay. Thank you, Dan. Attention, Kmart shoppers. I have a blue light special. I get no respect. You see that? That me? That's him up there. He's doing that. Move it further away? Okay. We got together today and we went to the Capitol where these fellows were honored by more officers than I've seen in a long time. And it was a very special ceremony. They do it once a year for Pearl Harbor veterans at the Capitol in Harrisburg. And the Lieutenant Governor made his remarks, and the lady sang some beautiful songs, and we really had a great time. It was very nice. What we didn't do is we didn't sit down and pre-program this. So this is going to be a little ad lib. So we're going to go from a general and into that. So bear with me, and we'll get started. Dick is from Allentown. This fellow's from Radnor now. You lived in Oklahoma and you moved to Radnor. One of the things that played a major role in Pearl, I forgot one thing. We have a volunteer operating the projector tonight, and I want to acknowledge him. It's my grandson, Andrew Fuller. If I forgot that, I'd be in trouble. My wife would be all over me. Yeah. One of the things that took place in Hawaii was called radar, and it had an impact. Several years ago, we had a fellow here by the name of Joe Lockhart, who I think our founder invited, Bill Jackson. Joe Lockhart was the fellow that pretty much, I should let you tell the story, why am I talking? He was up on Opana, up on the North Shore. Dick was in Fort Shafter. I'm going to just change this all around. I'm going to let you guys talk instead of me. And Bill was in Hickam. He signed up for, he listed, he wanted to be anywhere near planes, and they said, the only place we can send you, I think you were in Indiana at the time, right? In Pennsylvania. And they said, the only place we can send you is Hawaii. He said, I don't care, I'll go. So he's an aircraft mechanic, and this guy's a radar guy. Tonight we have both of them sharing their stories with us. Bill is going to talk about his experiences in Pearl tonight, but then he's coming back and he's going to have a night of his own because once he got out of Pearl, he went and got his pilot's certificate and he flew B-17s in Europe out of Foggia, I believe, right? So, Foggia, Italy. I should say southern Italy, yeah, Foggia. And he's going to come back and tell us his story, and it will take more time. So we have the benefit of 2 Pearl Harbor survivors sharing their stories. The radar, which played a major role, in fact, I don't think you were allowed to say radar, were you? Was it a secret word?
Yeah, well, I forget what it was anymore. But it was given to us August 14th of 1940. England gave us the radar. They were having a time fighting the Germans, and they perfected the radar, but they didn't have enough time to work on that and to take care of the German planes that were coming in. So they had the bright idea, let's give it to the United States with the hope that they will come in and help us. In other words, they try to get us in the war. And so they gave it to us August the 14th, and I enlisted August the 28th. And when they told me I was going on radar, I said, what's that? Nobody knew what radar was, because it was so new that, well, it was a foregoing thing before television, let's put it that way. And what it would do, it would send a beam out up to 120 miles, 150 miles, and it would pick up any kind of metal. And as it would hit the metal, it would bounce back into the radar, into a scope that we had a pilot sitting there, not a pilot, a man sitting there, watching it. And once we got that, he had to take any information he got, and he had a radio into an information center. And the information center was a big room like this, with a big table, with everything around it. I mean, any kind of town or whatever it was around it. So as the radar would hit this television, it would hit the plane, it would bounce back, and he had little standards he would put on the map. Now one of my jobs was later on was to watch that, which way the plane was going. If it was going away from the island, we didn't care. But if it was coming towards us, then we knew we had to find out who it belonged to. Now usually we had a naval officer on one side and an army officer on the other side. Now if I couldn't identify it, and that was only like a corporal, I think, at that one time. I couldn't say anything, I had to give it to an officer to either side, and they had to decide whether it was a friendly or an enemy plane. And that was the whole concept of radar. Now later on, we could never tell how many planes were coming. But then they had perfected it that the width of the radar beam would tell you if it was like one plane, it would be like one. If it was a plane, it would be wider. Then we didn't know if it was American planes or the enemy planes. So then they perfected IFF, identification, friend or foe. Now the friend or foe would send a beam in and it would go down. The plane would go up and this would go down. And we had it set for maybe 10 seconds. And we had to count the seconds. And then if it was seconds, then it would be our plane. If it's counted any other second, or did then we knew we had to keep an eye on that plane because it might be an enemy plane. That was the concept of the radar.
I went back and did a little history on that, and what you said, the Brits had it, and they had it pretty much perfected, and yeah, they gave it to us with the hopes that we would come into the war because they were having some rough times. It says here in 1940, less than a year after the Blitzkrieg, after blitzkrieging his way through Poland and the rest of Western Europe, the Nazi army set its sights on the UK and commenced a vicious bombing campaign targeting the nation's major cities. We know that because we had people here a month or so ago talking about the Blitz. Luckily, the British Royal Air Force saw this threat coming and cleverly deployed a series of radio stations to counter the Luftwaffe's legions. in what would become one of the world's first practical radar early warning system, codenamed Chain Home. This ring of coastal radar receivers was the backbone of the world's first integrated air defense. Throughout World War II, it provided RAF with nearly a half hour of lead time, which to scramble the squadrons of fighters to intercept. It was so powerful, in fact, that it could detect German formations even before they reached the English Channel from their bases in occupied France. The original iteration of Chain Home consisted of 21 AIM Types 1 radar stations running from Southampton to the Tyne. Each comprised a fixed antenna array strung across a series of 300-foot tall steel pylons. By beaming the radio waves across the channel and measuring the lag of the return, that's what you were talking about,
Right.
pings between various stations, the system could identify and track incoming squadrons within 5 degrees of accuracy. And with the advent of IFF, that's what you just said,
Right.
Identify Friendly Foe, technology, 2 years prior, British radar operators could easily differentiate their own troops from the enemy's. The system had some limitations. While an aircraft at 2,000 feet elevation could be spotted 235 miles out, elevations above or below were severely limited in range, roughly 25 miles for anything under 1,000 feet, just 50 miles for 5,000 feet. This left the UK desperately vulnerable to low-flying squadrons, which is why the system was quickly augmented with a secondary line of radar stations, dubbed Chain Home Low, specifically tuned to catch low-altitude insurgents. These two arrays were tethered to one another by telephone wires, as well as linked to the RAF Central Fighter Command. They provided invaluable and unsurpassed tactical data to the RAF's Observer Corps, allowing them 20 precious minutes to best position their defense against the German assault. So that sort of tells us what the Brits did and why we were so happy to get it. When we got that system, we were completely amazed at the high degree of sophistication that it was. And then we began working on it intensely. And that's when it, you said August, when did it come to Pearl?
Well, we got it from England the 14th. I enlisted in August the 28th, and by that time it was all in paper yet. So we were sent over to Hawaii. They picked Hawaii as the first place to set up the radar units.
Okay. Opana?
Opana?
Radar is a national landmark now. And during the wartime attack in Pearl Harbor, it's located, I think you said, the North Shore.
North Shore.
And I can't say that's a Hawaiian word, about 30 long, and I'm not going to be able to say it. But it gave a great view of the Pacific Ocean. December 39, they established the Aircraft Warning Service to defend American territories, SCR, 270 radar, long range, created Fort Monmouth, New Jersey. And it elevated, I'm going through Tet and everything else. Here's where they go. When they came to Hawaii, they went to Oahu, Keolia, Keokoko, Schofield Barracks,
Schofield Barracks, yeah.
and Fort Shafter. Does that name ring a bell?
Oh, yeah. I served them.
Why does Fort Shafter ring a bell?
Huh?
Why does that ring a bell?
Well, Fort Chapter was the general headquarters. That's where Tripler General Hospital was located
That's where you were stationed.
for a while.
Okay.
I was stationed first, I was up at Schofield, and then when we started rebuilding the information center, they sent me down to Shafter, because that's where we had took that
Okay.
old building and refurbished it into an information center.
It says here on Thanksgiving Day, 1941,
Yeah.
Schofield Barracks radar was set up and moved to a counter radar site. That's
Yeah.
up North Shore?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah. Because of the view of the ocean, 532 feet unobstructed. 4 trucks carrying transmitter, modulator, water cooler, receiver, oscilloscope operator, generator, antenna, and it's pretty much in the dirt up there. They didn't have any buildings, did they?
No, there's no tents. We didn't know what a building was. We slept in a tent most of the time.
Maybe it was top secret. December the 7th, that's the day we have today. And I'm going to get with him and I'm going to get with the colonel here. December 7th is manned by Private Joseph Lockhart and Private George Elliott, who detected approaching aircraft at 7:02 a.m. Were you sleeping then?
I was in my tent, yeah.
You were just supposed to get up, right?
No, I had been relieved that night.
Oh.
I worked my shift and I was relieved and Joe McDonald took my place.
Well, they're up there in the North Shore and they detected approaching aircraft. Since the truck to take them to breakfast was late, they continued to practice. Men reported their findings to the Temporary Information Center at Fort Shafter. That's where they were.
Mm-hmm.
Private Joseph McDonald took the call. He found Lieutenant Kermit Tyler when he entered the plotting room and he timed the message. He told him there was nothing. McDonald called back to the radar site and spoke to Joseph Lockhart. Joseph Lockhart is the one we had here 8 years ago. He lived in Devon Manor. He's since left us, but he was there. And he suggested calling back and get the plotters again. He indicated it was nothing. McDonald insisted Tyler talk to Lockhart directly. The information center staff had gone to breakfast. Kermit Tyler received a report. He reasoned the activity was a flight of B-17 bombers.
Yeah, they were coming in from the States.
Right. And advised the radar crew not to worry. Guys didn't believe that. He told the investigator, friend in the bomber group, they had known whatever the radar station played in Hawaiian, whenever they played Hawaiian music all night, a flight from inbound from the mainland would track on that radio station to come into the islands. So McDonald was relieved at 7:40 and returned to his tent, waking up his tent mate. This was his tent mate. This is in Wikipedia. You're in Wikipedia saying, Shim, the Japs are coming.
Right.
Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
So they continued plotting incoming planes till 7:40 when contact was lost. Shortly before 8 a.m., they headed for breakfast and only learned about the attack when they arrived. Elliott and Lockhart rushed back to Opana and operated the radar until the attack ended. Now, my friend Colonel, where were you when all this happened? You were down at Hickam Field?
Yes. Coming into the field,
Okay.
early morning.
Go ahead.
All right?
No, it's on your neck.
All right. Thank you. First, I would like to thank the Central Pennsylvania Foundation for their efforts in putting this together, and thank you for being here. And if you don't mind, I'd like to thank my daughter for having Geraldine Wood, for having the foresight to bring me back into the fold. I paid very little attention to these gatherings until my daughter decided to get me a jacket that you can see. I make note of that because when I was at a grocery store, I met a lady in a wheelchair who looked at me and gave me a big smile from ear to ear, grabbed my hand and kissed it, and it brought tears to my eyes to think that I could give an elderly lady a moment of remembrance of whatever she remembered. I have no idea, but again, I wish to thank my daughter and my son-in-law, who've given very good support, and my British friend, Sam Rackham from Great Britain. He was a lad during the war too, and he has a very healthy respect for the American people who helped Great Britain. And I wanted to pass that on to you, to let you know that there were very thankful people in the process. And again, I appreciate your presence. Thank you very much. And now may I ask you
Kurt told me to turn it off, and I have to figure out, is it on now? Okay. Now I have to figure out how to transition to where we are.
all right,
Planes are coming in, and
I'll take over. All right, I will.
When all this happened, you were at Fort Schaffner,
Yes.
and all hell broke loose. Did you
Yeah.
know what was going on, or did it continue?
Well, we had anticipated something. We had been on the alert the week before. We couldn't find the Japanese Navy, right? And I think the big thing that went wrong was, like 2 o'clock in the morning, they sank a Japanese submarine. No, that was never actually notified.
And then he sub?
Mini sub, big, 2-man sub. And that one there, if that might have been identified or sent into the naval command, and they would have contacted us, we would have had another thought. Now, as for the airplanes, when he said the airplanes were coming in, they were coming from the north, they were coming in from the States. These planes were coming from the east. I mean, had they thought about that, they might have been a little deeper, you know. But it's one of those things, what are you gonna say, you know?
What if?
Yeah. There's all kind of rumors about we had to get in the war and all that. You know.
What happened now? You're in Schaffner, planes are attacking, dropping bombs?
Yeah,
So, what's your duty level?
I did everything, you know, yeah. And, because by that time we had Admiral Kimmel, we had all the big shots down there.
You had Kimmel?
Oh, yeah, he came down to us.
Who else was there? You had another, was the general there?
Well, General, I don't remember seeing the general. He used to like to ride his horses too much, I think. He was a cavalry and all that stuff. But we had all kind of big brass, all the brass came down there where we were. And
Now, were you in touch with the North Shore? Were you more focused on what was happening where this guy was?
no, because the North Shore, actually, that radar wasn't, that day there was only one radar working.
Oh.
And the one from the east was the one coming with the Japanese, and the one coming from California was on the west. That would have been down near Honolulu. They had the radar unit right there. But so that was, and that's the difference maybe when you figure across the island from east to west. It's a couple miles.
It's a huge distance.
Yeah.
Colonel, you were at Hickam?
Indeed.
And were you sound asleep when the bombs went off? Or?
No. When the bombs went off, may I stand?
Sir, yes.
Thank you.
You,
I can't think very well sitting on my brains.
lean on the chair?
Okay, if you don't mind.
Might make it easier for you.
All right, very
I
good.
don't have rings.
Where shall I start? First, let me point out that downtown Honolulu, Saturday, was loaded with white uniforms. The fleet was in. And the streets were crowded. You could hardly move a vehicle through the streets, except for the shore patrol, equivalent to the military police, were hauling back those sailors who were inebriated to their particular ships. And when the brig got filled, as I understand it, told to me, they laid them out on the deck. I mentioned that to point out that there were some sailors who lost their lives not knowing we were at war. I See, I didn't think. And what I want to point out, emphasize, is that that night on the North Beach, around midnight, there was a black car, a mafia type, and I thought it was a lover's rendezvous. And I thought, well, as a kid in Pennsylvania, by the way, I'm from Indiana, Pennsylvania. I've come full circle just in the last few weeks here, back to Harrisburg, where I legally signed up, enlisted back in 1940. But anyhow, on the beach was this vehicle. And I thought, well, I'll go over there and get on a running board and rock the car to give him a little help. But I stopped and I found myself backing up, didn't realize I was backing up because I saw 4 heads motionless. They weren't in any compromising position. And then I noticed 2 big antennas on the rear bumper of the car, and they looked like 20 feet high. And boy, I was backing up and making sure I got some distance, turned around, ran like hell. I didn't know much about communications at that particular time, but I don't doubt for a minute this was on the north side of the island, and the Japanese airplanes were coming in from the north. I didn't realize until recently that they came southwest, but then to a point 100 to 200 miles north of Oahu, and then came south, in which I can understand the lieutenant who told the radar operator what he saw on his scope, that there were something coming in, and he said, forget it, because he knew that B-17s were arriving from the west coast, you see. But anyhow, so much for that. I don't doubt for a minute that this car, the individuals in it, were in contact with the Japanese fleet. I don't doubt that for a minute. I probably should call it the Armada, a Japanese Armada, because they had quite a few ships. But anyhow, I stayed at the recreational barracks on the north side that night, and the early morning, since there was no facilities for food or anything like that, my buddy and I were on our way back around 7:30 to Hickam to get breakfast. And as I was passing Wheeler Field, just a little bit north of Hickam Field and Pearl Harbor, I saw 3 airplanes, fighter airplanes, overhead, and I saw the rising sun on the side, and I said, I wonder who those belong to. And I said to my buddy, I said, you know, jokingly, we might be at war. Well, when I cleared Wheeler Field and I was able to look down, it had just begun. They were dive bombing the hell out of the ships parked around Fort Island, which is located in the center of Pearl Harbor. Two abreast. Oklahoma, West Virginia, and I can't think of them right now. Arizona. But yes, indeed. And I said, so we entered the gate and went to our orderly room, and I said to the adjutant, who happened to be there, now this is Sunday, everybody's off. But why was he there, I don't know, or unless he stayed on base, I'm not sure. But I asked the adjutant, what shall we do? And he said, the fighters were going on, and he said, I'll be damned if I know. So I felt rather free to roam around and see what was going on elsewhere. And I decided to go to the big barracks across the parade ground, and that was a big mistake on my part. I started and got fired on, and he wasn't after me. I was just dumb enough to get in his sights. He was trying to hit the barracks, and I was going to go for protection. It was the biggest barracks in the world at the time, the biggest mess hall matter of fact, they put 2 bowling alleys in the mess hall a couple of years later, and it was so large. But anyhow, yes, sir.
I made a big mistake.
Yes.
I didn't show video. Can we do that now? I don't want to.
Please.
Yes.
Please, yes.
I'm sorry.
We have a video, East Wind Rain, and it's made up for, was it the secret codes or the Japanese? And I should have started the program with it, and I neglected. So, Andrew, if you'll show that, it's not that long, but it'll give you a fuller understanding of how things.
Beginning in 1937, Japanese troops were making incursions into mainland China to expand access to natural resources. Between 1938 and 1941, the diplomatic corps worked to resolve the stalemate through negotiation. However, Japan was unbending because of its urgent need for resources. Accordingly, in July 1941, the United States placed an embargo on shipments of oil and other raw materials to Japan. In turn, the Japanese began moving aggressively southward into European and American interests in the Pacific.
From the Japanese point of view, they said, well, what did you expect? You had embargoed Japan. Embargo is an act of war.
During the same time, Frank B. Rowlett was leading a small group of cryptanalysts seeking to break the various Japanese encryption codes. In early 1941, they successfully broke the Japanese diplomatic and spy code, Purple. Records showed that the Japanese had no idea that the Allies were reading their diplomatic and spy communications. By the fall of 1941, the team of cryptanalysts decoded a flurry of messages which included instructions to destroy files and codebooks, indicating a Japanese understanding that negotiations were breaking down.
On November 19, 1941, an intercepted message provided various attack instructions, with different trigger words for each alternative. Because the diplomatic codebooks had already been destroyed, the trigger words would be broadcast as part of an ordinary-sounding weather report. North wind cloudy meant war with the Soviet Union. West wind clear meant war with the British Empire. East wind rain meant war with the United States.
Admiral Block had laid out long-range reconnaissance to monitor the shipping channels to the south of Hawaii, under the assumption that any potential attack would come from the south. At 3:30 p.m. on Monday, November 24th, Admiral Kimmel canceled an ongoing naval exercise and all long-range reconnaissance by the Navy, after receiving specific orders from Rear Admiral Royal Ingersoll to expect a surprise aggressive movement by Japan in any direction, but do not place the Pacific Fleet in a position that would precipitate Japanese action.
On November 26, 1941, the United States gave an ultimatum to the Japanese with a deadline of December 6th. U.S. interceptors continued to monitor ongoing exchanges among Japanese carrier groups. But on November 26, 1941, the Japanese ordered radio silence and the interceptors lost track of their location. From the communications center at Pearl Harbor, Private Dick Schimmel informed Admiral Kimmel,
"We couldn't find the Japanese Navy. We didn't know where it was."
The following day, Admiral Stark sent Admiral Kimmel a war warning. Admiral Kimmel shared the message with General Short. Consider this dispatch a war warning. Japan is expected to make an aggressive move within the next few days. Take appropriate measures against sabotage. Private Joseph Moore told us,
the engineers had built revetments to put the planes in, pulled all those planes out of the revetments, lined them in nice, neat rows in front of the hangars, so that one man could guard them from sabotage. The next day at noon, our dear regimental commander came down, Colonel Potts, and said, "Well, fellas, pull up the guns and take them back to the parade ground."
but no order followed to return the planes to their protective revetments, so they remained on the tarmac.
Early in the morning on December 4th, 1941, the Japanese weather report included east wind, rain. Naval radio operator Ralph Riggs picked up the message and teletyped the information to Washington, D.C. As of that moment, the government knew that the Japanese intended to attack the United States, a turning point in the U.S. involvement in the war.
Admiral Kimmel was demanding that Admiral Brock resume long-range aerial reconnaissance. Naval planes could not be used because their presence would have been provocative. Army planes, on the other hand, could reasonably have been on their way to wake Admiral. Although the commanders repeatedly requested additional assets, General George Marshall released only one plane.
Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto's Operation Order No. 1 set forth Japan's naval plans for the Hawaii raid. The order called for a Japanese carrier force to advance on Hawaii from the North Pacific, dart in, wipe out as much of the Pacific Fleet as possible, and disappear. As he wrote to the Japanese Prime Minister, "If the war continues after 6 months, I have no expectation of success."
Interestingly enough, Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox had issued a February 7, 1941 report analyzing likely Japanese attack options. His report identified the most likely option to be a surprise attack from the north.
When the Japanese diplomats finally received instructions from Tokyo on December 6, 1941, the United States actually decoded the message before the Japanese decoded it. As a result, the U.S. knew that the Japanese had declared the negotiations irretrievably broken down before the Japanese knew.
At 6:37 a.m. on December 7, 1941, Commander Outerbridge of the USS Ward reported the sighting of the conning tower of Japanese mini-sub I-20A. Against orders at 6:43, 2 shots were fired, striking the conning tower and sinking the sub. It was not recovered until 2002.
Whatever Admiral Kimmel knew or did not know, the next Americans to see the attack coming were radar operators at the O'Connor Radar Tracking Station, Privates George Elliott and Joe Lockhart. At 7:02 a.m., they saw a huge cloud of blips coming from the north, moving too fast to be anything but airplanes. They immediately telephoned the communications center to warn them of an apparent attack. Privates Joe McDonald and Dick Schimmel worked in the communications center. The information was forwarded to Lieutenant Kermit Tyler, the officer of the day at the communications center, who rejected their conclusion. A few minutes later, Lockhart called again to report the progress of the incoming flight and was again rebuffed.
Within minutes, the first bomb dropped. Unfortunately, with the plane still tip-to-tip on the tarmac, the Japanese attack resulted in the loss of 155 U.S. planes.
When we ran out, when we started hearing the bombs dropping, then somebody said it's a sham battle, which was the maneuvers like. But then when we ran out, you could see the planes diving, then you wouldn't see anything, and all of a sudden you see a big puff of smoke. So then we didn't know what was going on.
On the USS Helena, Navy electrician James Marty remembered. All hands had to go to their battle stations. It was 7:57. Why should we have to be doing this on a Sunday morning? Half a minute later, all the lights went out, and I felt a swaying. I didn't know it at the time, but that was when a torpedo hit the forward engine room.
The ammunition for our rifle, that was locked up in the supply rooms.
At 7:58 a.m., Admiral Kimmel ordered Private Bob Croner to send the emergency message. Air raid at Pearl Harbor. This is not a drill.
Even with no notice of the attack, and many sailors and soldiers on weekend leave, shipboard anti-aircraft artillery responded. Some soldiers were able to assemble and fire their weapons from the land, and 6 pilots were able to get airborne. 123 of the 350 attacking Japanese planes were disabled by American forces. In subsequent battles of which the U.S. had advance notice, anti-aircraft artillery consistently achieved a kill rate of at least 80%. Therefore, it is reasonable to anticipate that had anti-aircraft artillery been prepared for the Pearl Harbor attack, at least 80% of the attacking Japanese aircraft would have been shot down.
On the other hand, had Admiral Kimmel been warned of the attack in advance, he would likely have dispatched the battleships and aircraft carriers moored at Pearl Harbor to meet the Japanese attack. The Japanese battleships were faster and better armed than the U.S. battleships of the day. And the U.S., assuming that our aircraft were the best, were shocked to encounter the agile Japanese Zeros for the first time. So, had the U.S. fleet been sent out to meet the Japanese attack, they would likely have been pummeled at sea, resulting in much greater damage and loss of life. Admiral Chester Nimitz estimated that casualties could have been as much as 10 times what they were had the fleet been moored out of the harbor.
As it was, The Japanese failed to strike the fuel depot. The fleet was moored in port. Most of the sailors could be rescued from Pearl Harbor shallow waters, and because the Japanese failed to destroy the dry docks at Pearl, most of the damaged ships could be quickly restored to service. To take that analysis to the next step, we have to contemplate that, without the battleships and carriers that survived the Pearl Harbor attack, the U.S. might not have won the critical battle at Midway, exactly 6 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, just as Admiral Yamamoto had anticipated. As the commander of the battle at Midway, Admiral Nimitz said, "It was God's mercy that our fleet was in Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941.
Was knowledge of the Pearl Harbor attack a turning point in U.S. involvement in World War II? Clearly it was. Roosevelt had what he needed to overcome the opposition of post-World War I pacifists and isolationists to declare war against the Japanese. The very next day, he declared,
December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
Would the outcome have been different had the commanders at Pearl Harbor known of the attack in advance? Clearly, yes. Could the outcome have been better? Yes. Could the outcome have been much, much worse? That answer has to be yes, too. In either case, though, the turning point for U.S. involvement in World War II was east wind rain.
And answers, and we have Kurt with his handy microphone to run around. We don't have Laura, but we have somebody with a microphone. We'd like to have questions and answers so you can flesh out what you would like to know about Pearl.
Question? Who said that?
Okay, this newspaper clipping. Maybe you want to read it.
Some 100 sailors and Marines killed when the USS Oklahoma capsized during the Pearl Harbor attack 76 years ago have been identified, the military reported Friday. The milestone comes 2 years after the Defense POW-MIA accounting agency dug up nearly 400 sets of remains from a Hawaiian cemetery. Officials exhumed the bodies after determining that advances in forensic science and genealogical help from families made it possible to identify the men. They had been classified as missing since World War II. Welcome home. Questions?
Over here.
Hi, yes, I'm United States Marine veteran Gail Wise. I was stationed at Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii. Where was Opana, according to Kaneohe Bay?
Opana was on the northeast corner. There's a big hotel there now. In fact, we have a plaque there. They put a plaque up there for us. It's all the way at the end, out there.
Way over there, okay. Can you yell?
There's another thing.
Colonel, we sort of stopped your story running across that tarmac at the airfield where you were. Could you continue that story that you stopped?
You said you were running across the tarmac.
On the way to the barracks, you were running towards the barracks when all hell broke loose.
Sorry.
You were running across the tarmac on your way to the barracks when all hell broke loose. And then Charlie interrupted you. It wasn't just the Japanese, sorry, too.
The playground I was running across when I got fired on.
Yeah.
Which was my mistake. And the Zero was trying to torpedo the barracks in the first place. And here I was running to where he was trying to torpedo. Am I answering your question?
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
What did you do after that?
And then,
Stay back here.
well, I went back to my barracks and got in line. There was a line up to get a rifle and a 45 or both. And I got both. The sergeant, supply sergeant, said rank, name, and serial number, and then signed. And then when this Zero came through and hit a few people, didn't get anybody killed at the time, and I was on the tail end, and I left out again. And he finally woke up, I guess, and says, "Come and get it." So, did I answer the question?
Yes.
How long did it last? Must have seemed like forever, but how?
No, the best I can say, now remember, I'm only one person and everybody has a slightly different angle and a different position from which to speak. And so from my observation, it lasted, it seemed like I was involved in it for at least 20 minutes to a half an hour that it was going on, that they were back and forth, and especially the Navy really did take the brunt. There's no question about it. That's why I saluted this morning the naval people. They really got hit compared to us folks at Hickam Field. They were confined to the ship, you know, and you can only walk so far, and you drop into the water, and I felt very sorry because there were some who got hit, never knew they were at war, as I see the picture. And so I salute the Navy, no question about it. Do I answer your question?
And technically, we weren't at war until the next day when Roosevelt declared war.
Oh, yeah, may I speak on that? No.
Certainly.
If, I could not understand why we weren't on a token alert, at least from the newspaper telling us what the Japanese were doing in China and Indochina and in the islands where there was oil. That was the key. They were hell-bent on conquest, but they needed oil. And we were interfering. Get the picture? That's how we come to be surprised. Now, let me make a comment on that point, why we were surprised. And it bugs me to this very day. Let me get my brains. There was a communique from D.C., perhaps General George Marshall or whatever it was. Very likely Roosevelt had him send us a communique to Schimmel and Short. And the communique was, expect action. I didn't learn this until 4 or 5 years ago when I read some of the books. I should have read sooner. But when I saw that, I almost came out of my pants. And had I known that, the communique also said, don't pass this information on to the lower ranking officers. Now here I'm a soldier, airman at the time, Army Air Corps, and I knew nothing about it. But I can certainly tell you, had I known about it, and what I saw that night that I pointed out to you just a while ago, that vehicle out on the beach with those two big antennas, I'd have been knocking General Short's door down.
That's right.
You follow me? Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, way back here. Hang on. I'll get there.
Sir, thank you very much for being here tonight. Ken Akon, I served in the Navy way long time after all this happened. But anyhow, my question is that we hear a lot about the population of the United States at the time was very isolationist. What's been my look at it, service people tend to be more pragmatic. And what did the average service member think about this? Did they see it coming and they just knew it was just a matter of time? Or they just as shocked as like most of the American people were?
Kurt, he didn't hear the question.
I'm sorry, but I didn't catch the question. I'm sorry.
The average service person at the time, did they see the war coming and know that it was coming?
Some did, some didn't. Some did, some didn't see it.
I want to know if the average serviceman saw the war coming or did not see it. And Dick said some of them did, some of them didn't.
Did not see the war coming, I'm sorry to say that. But I, like I said, could not understand why we were not on a token alert at least. I could not understand that. We should have been, just from the local Honolulu newspaper, of the atrocities committed by the Japanese on the Chinese and in Indochina and the various islands, Philippines and what have you, wherever there was oil. Did I answer the question?
Yes, you did, sir. Thank you.
All right, good evening. And son of a World War II vet, next generation here, I'd be interested to know, and many of you might know this, Joe Lockhart, who was alluded to earlier, and he was in the movie, mentioned, you might know that Joe Lockhart went on for specialized training later on, and he served in various capacities with communications and erecting towers and so forth. First, Dick, did you go on to any specialized training later on and stay in that capacity? And then also, William's capacity also, later on. You were both connected to air, you were in Army Air. So that's the question. Both of your roles later on during the war, any other specialized training? And again, a reminder about Joe Lockhart there. I think Joe actually was in Alaska for a while. Some of you might confirm that or know that about him setting up towers in Alaska.
Joe Lockhart, the day after the war, he was sent back to the States. They got a Distinguished Service Cross, and then they sent him to OCS school. They made him a lieutenant, and then they shipped him up to Alaska. And that's the last I heard of him until I met him many years later.
Did you go on for special training yourself later, or any other relevant?
What's that?
Dick, did you get special training after Pearl Harbor? Any further training?
Our training. It was so new, we did our own training. We trial and error. Most of our stuff was trial and error. We figured it out. Just like the IFS and all that kind of stuff. But there's an interesting story. I can't think of his name now. There was a naval lieutenant around 1936. Said if the Japanese would ever attack us, they would come down through Koli Pass, which was in the north, Schofield Barracks, past Schofield Barracks, something. And would you believe they drummed him out of the Navy? That's the way the Japanese came in. And he was gone after that. He had passed away in the meantime. But that's a true story.
Billy Mitchell?
Billy Mitchell. That's right. Billy Mitchell was the man. I couldn't think of his name. Getting old.
Hi, thank you so much for coming tonight. My question, especially for Dick, is if those initial radar contacts had been taken with the seriousness that they obviously deserved, would there, and then that information passed up the chain of command, would there have been sufficient time to scramble our aircraft, especially our fighters, at the various air bases on Oahu to meet the incoming Japanese attack force?
We would have got some of them off. But first of all, when they did, like he said, when they had the planes all grouped together for section, right? And if they would have hit one plane, they'd hit 4 other planes. One plane would explode and all the other planes would explode. As for that, the men were trained. I mean, we would have been still damaged. But at least we wouldn't have been as bad as it was. Although it did make a big blunder, that war. They didn't hit the oil depot. If they would have hit the oil depot, it would have really been bad for us. Because we could bring planes in from the States and get that oil. But if they wouldn't have had that oil, they wouldn't have been any good.
And the ships were sunk in shallow water, and you had repair docks
Right.
in the water. So we were able to get our ships back in action. Heard one over here.
I can help.
Go ahead.
What did the two of you do after the battle? Did you rush down to the harbor to try to help the Navy get the men off the ship? Did you go to the hospitals?
I was near Tripoli General Hospital. I went over and helped over there a little bit. You know what I mean? We were at Fort Chapter at that time, and we were right near a dump. And they dropped a bomb in the dump. So we lucky they didn't. I think they might have been going for Tripoli General, but they missed it. You know. But no, we did. In other words, when something like that happens, you're so busy doing things. You know what I mean? You're trying to help each other out. That's the way the American people are.
What did you do after it happened?
Yeah, I got that one. What did I do after? Okay. After, and by the way, let me say that I couldn't believe it. After the Japanese withdrew, if that's your question, which that was the second mistake, my way of thinking. They made two mistakes, one for attacking and one for withdrawing. I could not understand why they didn't drop off 2 or 3 troop ships loaded with soldiers. They could have had the island and the war would have been at least another 10 years. There are no islands between Hawaii and the west coast, except the islands near the coast. It would have taken a long time to redo the fleet. And a lot of us would have been slaughtered. There's no two ways about it. But they withdrew. They did us a favor. So that was the second mistake. Matter of fact, that saved us from rounding them up. How neat and convenient it was when you look at it that way. That's what I saw. So I felt very thankful for that. And now a little more on what did I do after that. Well, that day and after they withdrew on the withdrawing phase, I went to the hospital, stood guard, and I had a rifle and I had a .45. I managed to commandeer, and when we, well, later on after the a bulldozer pulled up to near the hospital and dug a trench for the purpose of throwing limbs, meat, human meat, what have you, into the trench. And boy, that kind of got to me. And afternoon I found they had no more need for me, so then I went to the Coast Artillery, who had some machine gun pits, and I thought I would give them assistance. And I ended up in a machine gun pit, and I didn't know that. It was getting nighttime now, and next morning I found myself in this machine gun pit in the middle of a lot of gasoline trucks and a lot of heavy equipment, which was a damn good target. But anyhow, a friend of mine coming by said, Bonelli, the commander was rounding up everybody. We need to work on aircraft. I was an aircraft mechanic. And on the B-17, B-18, and B-24 when they were starting to come in. And the captain said, you left your machine gun pit. I could have you shot. I gave you a hell of a lot of help last night. What are you asking for? And I said, besides, I fix airplanes. I got to get back and get to work. There's something else I wanted to say. I lost my brains.
At dawn we slept.
Say dawn we slept.
At dawn we slept.
Oh yes, that wasn't my book at dawn.
Oh, I know. I mean, it was pretty good. But then I remember reading something, and I don't know where, that the Navy in the pre-war had, during some tabletop maneuvers or some others, one proposal was to have a strike almost like the Japanese pulled, and they said no. And then the Japanese, I think they must have learned from the British attack at the Italian naval base in Taranto, Italy, where they launched aircraft and sank and damaged a lot of Italian warships in 1940.
Is there a question there?
You got somebody up there?
Okay. Jack Thomas, longtime member. Before the attack, as an aviation mechanic, you know, Hickam was a bomber base. What were some of the aircraft you worked on? You kind of semi-answered it, but what were some of the aircraft which you worked on?
I'd like to know what aircraft you worked on.
Oh, okay.
Besides the 17, the 18, I guess.
B-17 primarily, which I flew in Europe, and the B-24, and by the way, 41, Pearl Harbor, 42, I ended up further deployed to B-40. No, I was a B-17 pilot.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, the fighter pilots, weren't they B-40? P-40?
Oh, yes, B-40 pilots, yes. Let's see, what was, oh, I ended up in Fiji, Fiji Islands, which is just on the other side of the international date line, where tomorrow begins every midnight, the first hour, 175 east longitude and about 17 degrees south latitude, not too far from Australia. We were to provide support to Macau. And I lost all hope. Sorry to say this, but I lost all hope and accepted as a fact that I would never see the mainland again. And I'm saying this because if it wasn't for the red, white, and blue hanging on this one beat-up hangar, one aircraft beat-up hangar, which gave me hope of what I was fighting for.
Amen.
And I'm saying that because I'm very hurt when I see somebody disrespect. So
All right, we're getting close to winding down here, but
I'm not finished, please.
yes, you are. No, you're not.
I've got to say something good. To pass over a short, interesting story, I lucked out. I was in total despair now. I lucked out. My application for flying cadets was accepted. I found myself on a Dutch boat, Boschfontein, leaving Vimy-le-Vaux, the large island, 4 or 5 days later. On my way back to the States, 20 days to get back to Los Angeles. And I don't mind telling you, that first night, out over the seas, thunderstorms, lightning. And I went up on, there were about 10 of us, went up on deck to get away from the smell because they were up chucking. I didn't get anything. And I can remember wrapping my legs around the railing because it was thunderstorming and what have you. And then I took my belt off and tied my legs together so I wouldn't get washed overboard.
Oh, my.
And I cried like a baby. Leave me. And every night I would go to the bow and hang on and say, I have a chance, I have a chance, I have a chance. I'm coming back to the States to go to flying cadets. Thank you for listening.
Before we do our final wrap-up, your friend Sam would care for a word.
Good evening, Mr. Bonelli. Good evening all. I'm the London lad that Mr. Bonelli referred to that lived during the Blitz and have become great friends with him and his family. I just want to say on behalf of myself and lots of other British people, if it hadn't have been for the Americans entering the war, that I would probably be speaking German now. And I want to thank all the veterans from this side of the Atlantic. I'm an American citizen now, and we appreciate you guys coming in and getting us out of a lot of trouble, because we couldn't have done it without you. Mr. Bonelli, you're a great man.
Thank you, Sam. On the way down, let me remind you, the Helmet Committee would love to greet you on your way out. But before you go, I got to tell you, this is a terrific crowd tonight. This sanctuary holds 500 people. Look around, there's not that much space, so this may be nearly a record crowd, so it's a tribute to our guests here. What we do, typically, is reward our speakers with something that nobody gets but the speakers. And this is our highly coveted, highly desired, very inexpensive World War II round table mug, which we award to our speakers. And I would like to award one to each of you. And I guarantee you it'll hold potent liquids and may arigato. May work into the here.
Just one more word. Pearl Harbor. I wrote a 4-page book. It only takes a few minutes to read. It's in the computer. Put my name, William P. Bonelli, and then 4 words, My Pearl Harbor Dream. And you'll get that. It's worth reading. It's just one person. Now remember, that's just one person. Their others may have a different, but it seems to corroborate everything I've seen and witnessed.
Thank you all for coming. Please come back next month.